Yahawah never wanted spectators. He formed a nation of priests. Identity was never passive. It was functional. 2 Esdras 8:28 and 29 says this: "Think not upon the wicked deeds of the nations." So right off the bat, we see the plurality of nations. So this is of all the peoples of the earth that was mentioned in the previous passage. And of all those nations, they commit wicked deeds. Think not upon the wicked deeds of the nations, but upon those who have served you in truth. Regard not the impious acts of the ungodly, but the endeavors of those who have kept your covenants amidst afflictions. So covenant keepers stand out through acts of truth and faithfulness. That is the difference between wicked deeds and those who stand on truth. And not just stand on truth, but act those truths out. So that is what covenant keepers do. Stand on the truth, act out the truth, align with the truth, which means aligning with the Most High, Yahawah. Jubilees 1:25 through 29, and this is a condensed version of those passages, but you can read those for yourself. You can look them up and read them. They will return to me from among the nations. So why do they need to return from among the nations? Why does Yasharahla need to return? Yasharahla needs to return because they've been scattered. And Jubilee says that there will be a returning to the promised land. They will return to me from among the nations, and I will be their father, and they shall be my children, and they will be called children of the living Elohim. And every angel and spirit will know them, and I shall plant them in righteousness, or in set apartness, in my covenant. So again, separated in his covenant. So being part of the people of Yahawah's covenant carries distinct identity and purpose. And that is important for us to grasp and understand. There is a distinct identity and purpose for the children of Yasharahla. Isaiah 43:1. But now, thus says Yahawah, He who formed you, O Yasharahla, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. So now we see in Isaiah, it specifically identifies Yasharahla as the set apart nation, the set apart people, formed by him. And we'll look at this word formed in just a bit, because that word is important for us to understand. And then in Romans 9:6 through 8, for not all who are descended from Yasharahla belong to Yasharahla, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring. And so this is not cultural, but covenantal and crafted. And this particular Romans 9 is very specific that not all who are descended from Yasharahla belong to Yasharahla. Anyone want to take a swag at what that is talking about?
I'm guessing it's just in connection to all the mixings of the nations that Yasharahla ended up doing. A lot of the tribes intermarried with other nations, and the most important piece of that is that these other nations didn't have allegiance to the Most High. So, and it was also in disobedience, because there was a lot of times there was instructions for the set apart people to not intermingle with these nations that serve other mighty ones. So I think that's where it hinges the difference, because you have intermixings. I think a good example is the Samaritans, right? I think the Samaritans are actually a mixings of Hebrews with Assyrians, and that brought a lot of confusion to the faith of the original people, because the Assyrians have their own deities, they have their own gods. And I remember the story of the woman at the well with the Messiah. She was a Samaritan, and she was trying to take claim of being an ancestor of the father Jacob or Jacob, and our Messiah was like, "You don't know who you worship."
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if you remember that story. It's kind of like,
yeah, absolutely,
punch in the gut. It's like, you don't know who you worship. You don't know who you are. And I think that's the element of that story, is the mix of the false mighty ones that those people would intermingle with. So anyway, that's kind of what.
Yeah, so that's strong. That's very strong, and absolutely accurate in terms of the mixing. I want to take us back a little further. Who is Yasharahla? Who was Yasharahla before Yasharahla by name? And that was whom?
Jacob.
Yeah, right. And Jacob, because who was he? Before he was born, who was he? Wasn't he a twin? So he was a twin, but they were, when you think about that, you think about that also, even at that beginning, there was already this distinction being made. Now, Romans 9 is talking about what you're talking about. It's not everyone that belongs to Yasharahla, right? That that they're not the promise, and they're not counted as offspring because of disobedience. But that really kind of started even before that, even in the womb, right? There was a separation between Yahawah and his twin, and we'll see that in just a moment. Priesthood was always the goal, and priesthood is really about a nation. In this case, it's about a nation, because before Yasharahla as a nation is identified, or as Yasharahla as a nation is identified, there was this Levitical assignment that only the Levite priest could approach Yahawah in the temple. And that still, to some extent, separated the nation itself from the Most High. And when we think about that, certainly there was the covenant established on Sinai. Yasharahla became that covenant nation, but through Yahawashi, there was a separation. Through Yahawashi, there was this covenant relationship that now reverted back to Melchizedek's priesthood, and everyone has that access to the Most High directly. And in Exodus 19:6, "And ye shall be to me a reign of priests and a set apart nation." Again, identifying that set apartness. But 1 Peter 2:9 says that Yasharahla is a royal priesthood. But when we look at that entire passage, again, we see, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a set apart nation, a people for possession. We are possessed, we are a possession of Yahawah. That you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. And I gotta tell you that some of these scriptures, as we read through these scriptures, are scriptures that have used for a lot of my, particularly my adult life, and recited, but there was a connection that was missing that me personally, I was totally unaware of. And as we learn more about our connection to the Most High and what he is actually teaching in his word, and we eliminate all the man-made frameworks, these scriptures they take on a totally different meaning and relationship. Just like who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. And he is talking specifically about a nation of people who were in darkness and are now in light. And it just means so much more to me once I understand what it's talking about. A royal priesthood, he's talking about a specific people, a chosen race. He's talking about a people. And when you think about that, it can't be an organization. A race of people is not an organization, it's a people. A royal priesthood is not an organization, it's a people. A set apart nation, not an organization, a people. So it just takes on a different meaning when you think about the words that are used and how they relate to a nation of people. Any thoughts on that one before we move ahead?
Yeah, maybe this is a reflection question at the end, but my thought with that is, how do we balance the line of identifying with this, acknowledging it and embracing it, but at the same time reflecting the humility to not kind of put ourselves on a pedestal. I don't know if you're going to touch on that a little bit later, but that's one of the things I've seen a struggle with is for people to actually align with who the correct people are. And then if they are willing to do that, step two is, do you see the prophetic alignment with allowing them to be that, Yep. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So not specifically on that note, but this is what it boils down to. It boils down to, you mentioned humility, but it boils down to love. And when we love the way that Yahawashi, the way he loved, the way the Most High loves, then we do approach everything we do with humility. We're not better because of being chosen. We are set apart because of obedience. And being obedient sometimes means that even though we share in love and we choose to walk in covenant, there will be those who disagree. But that doesn't mean that we treat them in some awful way. It means that we are gentle. It means that we are patient. It means that we continue to serve and be an example. And it does become tough because sometimes there are also attacks, and we have to still stand on truth. And, when we think about how there's another side to that as well, because when we think about how the Most High, Yahawah, how Yahawashi, how they approached truth, is that they never wavered. And sometimes their messages, many times, their messages are harsh in terms of what we think about today, because we've been taught to be nice and treat people in a way that doesn't hurt their feelings and will make them feel good. But truth doesn't always feel good, and we see that over and over in the scripture. Just like the example you mentioned, the woman at the well. They're in today's time, some of those words would be considered harsh words that Yahawashi used with the woman. Telling her about herself. The husband you have is not your husband, right? Telling her she doesn't know who she's worshiping. So those become harsh, but he said it out of love because he wanted to get her attention. So does that give some?
Yeah, I think you answered that really well. Yeah, and I love the emphasis of the love and obedience. That ties in really well in my head, because that's the humbling part of recognizing the calling and being chosen. It's not an automatic thing. You got to play your part and operate and abide in that love and abide in obedience in order to take on that prophetic calling. So that's a tall order in of itself. And also the humbling part of that is realizing that we have to rely on his spirit to be able to know how to obey and to walk in that love. So yeah, that was good.
Absolutely a tall order, and thank you. That is absolutely a tall order. Not only that, but in this time of restoration, because that's what we're doing. We're vessels in this restoration, right? And in doing so, we will make missteps in the flesh. We have to rely upon the guidance of the Ruach HaKodesh, the set apart spirit. We have to rely on that, because we have to rely on him, because if we don't, then we will certainly not follow the right paths and not go the right way. So we definitely have to be led by the Spirit. So yeah, tall order, but that's why we are considered a royal priesthood, because it's been given to us to follow that path, the ancient path, the way of Yahawah. Priesthood unlocks purpose, but it also triggers resistance. The next episode exposes why your identity is under attack. Click through.